Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Durham. I'm chairman of BCS Central London branch and North London branch, two great groups, and I've got a whole lot of wonderful colleagues, mostly to do with IT and with loads of inspiring ideas. But of course, today's session is about one particular inspiring person. And we are very fortunate to have Wendy Mars, the Senior Vice President of Cisco, and all those other great things that you can see there on screen. So whilst we spare just a minute for you to read all this information, I will tell you that I have a number of colleagues with us to help us to enjoy the experience this evening. But you, of course, are the main participant in the audience, already with your questions, I hope, in order to enter them into the Q&A. And we will pass those questions to Wendy when we can after her interview by Chloe. So key people there, you can see on screen, Wendy interviewed by Chloe. Please do take another minute just to read the information on screen. And then I'll switch over to Wendy.
Thank you so much, and it's wonderful to be here with all of you today. Really looking forward to the conversation, and engage in the chat, Chloe, with yourself. So let's get started. I'm really looking forward to this.
Absolutely. Over to you, Wendy and Chloe.
Thanks. Yeah, very much looking forward to talking. Well, I've very much been looking forward to talking to you, Wendy. And without further ado, let's get going. So it'd be great to find out a little bit to start the conversation about your current role at Cisco.
Sure. So my current role at Cisco is I'm responsible for the region of Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Russia for Cisco. So within that region, there are 123 countries. So I'm responsible for the business across all of those different countries. And within Cisco, we have three regions. So we have the Americas, North and South. We have my region of EMEAR, and also we have Asia Pacific, Japan, and China. So that's so I run one of the regions, and in the job I have the opportunity to do lots of different things, working with our customers of Cisco, our partners of Cisco, around all areas relating to technology, but especially around digital transformation, which of course is a big theme now, and the acceleration of the use of technology in lots of different types of companies.
Great. Sounds like a very big role and a lot that you sort of work on and that encompasses. Is there anything you can tell us about some of the items you've worked on or sort of projects you worked on during your time there?
Yeah, you know what, it's been, if I look for my time at Cisco, I've been able to do a number of different jobs, in my time at Cisco, and which has been amazing from a variety perspective of the different things I've had the opportunity to get involved in. So, if I think about prior to the role I'm in right now, I ran the data center area for Cisco. So when we launched new innovation and new technology to the market around the compute portfolio, I was responsible for that within the region. And bringing out new innovation, new technology to market was very cool. It was very exciting. Running a startup in a large mature business was a really unique thing to be able to do. I've been involved in large build outs of new environments and new projects with different customers over the region that we have, and we get involved in work with lots of different types of organizations. So with in the enterprise side of the business, as we would call it, with banks, with retailers, in the public sector side with healthcare providers, schools and education, with government as well. And then also, with different service providers, etc. So there's a huge amount of variety, in the types of organizations that I get to work with. And you learn a huge amount on what's important for each of those organizations. And work with them to understand how to use technology in a way that's going to help them to achieve their business goals overall.
That's great. Do you have any tips for the audience on how you can sort of set that message to your clients on how they can use technology? Maybe some sort of building blocks or key points to think about?
You know, something that I think is really important, Chloe, is it's really trying to understand what it is that organizations are trying to achieve. You know, so spending the time to really sit, to listen, to understand what some of those objectives might be. It may be that a company is launching something new, so a new area that it's entering into. It may be that a company has made an acquisition and they're bringing parts of their businesses together. It may be that they're entering a new market or a new country. So really understanding some of those themes and spending the time to sit and to listen, to work some of those elements through, and then you can start mapping where and how some of the solutions and capabilities can really help them. Otherwise, the danger is you can be in a situation of you've got a set of things and you just talk at the person, you know, around it. So it's really, you know, taking the time to understand, put yourself in the shoes of that organization and think through what the challenges there are and the opportunities that they might have. And then you can work with them to say, how can I try to solve this? You know, work with them.
Definitely. Fantastic. You touched a little bit on how you'd got to your current role, but maybe if we go a little more in depth on what your career journey was to get to the current role that you're in at Cisco.
Yeah, sure. You know, I've worked for 3 companies in my career, and I've been working in the technology sector now for, you know, in January coming up soon, and it amazes me to say this, it'll be 30 years. You know, for me working in the technology sector, and it's amazing how much it's moved at pace, you know, during that time. But you know, I studied electronic engineering, and whilst I studied electronic engineering, I was sponsored by the Ministry of Defence. So I used to spend time with them in the summers, you know, of my undergraduate degree at the MOD, working on some projects with them. And then I decided to take a master's degree, and I took a master's in operational research, which was management science, and you know, both of those things complemented each other quite well. And then my first job was with Morgan Stanley, so I joined them on the graduate program and worked with them for 4 years and moved around internationally with them. Which, you know, is one of the things I would say, if you get the opportunity to live and work abroad, it's very, very valuable, you know, to be able to do that. So I worked with Morgan Stanley initially in London, then I moved to New York with them, and then I moved to Tokyo with them, and working on lots of different types of projects with, so Morgan Stanley is an investment bank, with a group of a group that's very, very focused on, you know, investment banking based activity, running mission critical infrastructures, high performing technology infrastructures, and you know, very demanding as a result of that. So for me, it was a great opportunity at Morgan Stanley to learn some of the different dynamics that were important for them as a business, important for the banking sector, but then also to be able to work in their 3 regional international hubs, you know, of Europe with London, of New York with the American business, and then also Tokyo with the Asian business. So I had the opportunity to do that, and then I returned to London to manage the team that I had originally left, you know, when I'd gone off on my travels. And at that time, I felt, you know, I was ready for a change, and there was a group of individuals that had formed a startup company that were all ex-Morgan Stanley technology people who I knew, that I'd worked with in New York when I was there, and I went to join them. So I joined the startup company, which was called Throughpoint. I was the 9th employee with them. So I moved back to New York with them, and worked with a lot of the different banks, actually. And so what that company did was, it was a professional services company focused on, again, technology related themes, but really around working on development of business cases, designing and implementing, you know, large environments for for different types of organizations. So I worked back in New York again, and then also I had the opportunity to go to Texas with them. So I did that. And then it got to the stage where for me, either I had to decide, did I want to stay in the US and get a green card and establish myself there, or did I want to return to the UK? And I decided to return to the UK. So did that, and and got involved in a lot of European work. And then it got to the stage for me with the startup where we were involved in conversations around potentially someone buying the company, or the company merging with someone else. And I was able to be involved in those conversations, which was pretty exciting. But we also had done, it's funny, I look back now, and that company, Throughpoint, had venture capital investment from Morgan Stanley, my first employer, and also venture capital investment from Cisco, where I am now. And so that was kind of the connection of the journey for me. So I had done a lot of work with Cisco from the beginning, from the Morgan Stanley days as well. So I knew Cisco well. And then I had the opportunity to join Cisco and worked with them initially in the UK business, and then to the European business, did work there, and then to the region I'm in now. So for me, in having that, moving around, doing those different things, I had an opportunity to learn new things, to build my own skill and capability, but also the travel and the international movement, I think, was invaluable for me as well.
Great. Sorry, I think we forgot to mention at the beginning of the call, if there are any questions that you have, feel free to put them in the Q&A section, and we will answer them at the end of the sort of Q&A portion of this as well. So building on that, are there any challenges that you faced moving around different countries, or maybe moving between jobs or different areas in your career journey?
Oh, plenty, Chloe. And if I think for in moving around for different places, I remember when I first moved to the US, and I was in my 20s, it was really exciting. And I remember being going over a bridge into Manhattan in a taxi with my suitcase in the back, thinking, wow, this is so exciting. And then I get there, and I'm there 2 weeks later, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm not on holiday, this is it, I live here now. And the realization of that, and it takes you a little while to sort of settle, and then you get to you have a new environment, you make new friends, new colleagues, and balancing with that, you miss home, but then also you're in a new environment where you're building some of those new relationships. And then I remember for me, I was just getting settled in there after about a year, actually. And then Morgan Stanley said to me, we're cost cutting, expats need to go home now. I'm like, oh, I've only just got my feet under the table here and felt comfortable. And I had a week where it was either you go back to London, you go to Tokyo, or you go to Hong Kong. And each day it was changing, what was going to happen. And in the end, I went to Tokyo. So I think moments like that were personally, I would say to you, I'm not someone who takes a lot of risks. I don't believe I'm a big risk taker, but yet I look back and some decisions I've made along the way, I thought, well, it's controlled risk. I've really thought through, what some of those steps would be. And, and I remember when I was first at Cisco and I was asked to do the data center job that I mentioned, and running the startup in a big company was very, very exciting. And I look back on those days with very, very fond memories, but it was hard work, really hard, because you're thrown in at the deep end and you're thinking, I don't have all the answers, what do I do? And you realize it's some sink or swim time. And I'm like, I'm a good swimmer, I'll be fine. Now having that confidence in your own ability. And if you don't know, just ask, just ask someone. And you'll be able to work through all the different dynamics and things as well. So, I think you have hurdles along the way personally, but also professionally, as you have different things, different experiences that you're not expecting, but that's how you learn a lot about how to deal with those, but also you learn about yourself.
Definitely. And in regards to switching roles or starting a new role, be it in a new company or a new country, do you have any tips on of how to get settled, how to learn the ropes, maybe make an impact?
I think one of the things is to really, when you get that opportunity that comes forward to you, you know, I would really say to everyone, don't qualify yourself out, first of all, and think, oh, I can't do that, it's too different, or it might be too difficult. I remember someone saying to me years ago, linked to that job, the data center job I mentioned, when a door opens, walk through it, take the opportunity. And I thought it was such sound advice, you know. So I would say, firstly, don't qualify yourself out and say, no, go for it, do it. Because these things don't come along all the time, you know, sometimes they don't come along very often. And I think when you start something new, initially, it's about, and I think in starting any new job, actually, and again, this is a tip someone gave me years and years ago, write down your first observations when you go into a new job, because you'll have a clarity of thought for the first 30 days that you never get back. You know, so really think about what you observe, why, you know, and some of the different things that you see. And then you can reflect back on that, you know, after you've been in the job for 3 months, 6 months and things. But also, you know, spending the time to listen. You know, you'll have a view, you'll have an opinion, but make sure that you don't just, you know, bulldoze through with your view and opinion. Listen to people around you, establish your thinking, and then move, you know, and then spend time driving that change, you know, whatever it is that you're bringing, and also build a great team around you. You know, I feel incredibly proud of the team I have, and you know, I've spent a lot of time building that team, and that, you know, focusing on that and getting people clear on what you're trying to achieve and why, and connecting with people is really, really important.
Great. I think that's very sound advice. If we move on to maybe something a bit more technical, or kind of talking a little bit more about the tech world. In the past 2 to 3 years, or let's say maybe 5 years, if that's too short a period of time, what changes have you seen in both the business and tech world?
You know, it's amazing. You know, if I think about the pace of change in technology is remarkable. I think we all see that in our daily lives. And also the way in which, you know, I remember we would talk probably 5 years ago of every company is a technology company, and that's real now. It's true. You know, so if you think about with the way in which business depends on technology, uses technology, and you think about how and why, you know, so looking at the way in which people communicate. Look at right now, you know, look at the prevalence of using video from a communications construct within our personal lives and within business, the style and the way in which we're using the nature of work becoming hybrid. You know, that's a classic example of innovation from a technology perspective. Also, if you look at the way in which organizations and businesses are looking to use data and insights to make decisions that will help to inform their business strategy and capability there. So we have a wealth of information, a wealth of data in structured and unstructured forms. How do you do something meaningful with that? And, you know, and if we think about now, as we're connecting more and more things in the world, I read something earlier, I think it was yesterday, that we have, for every human in the world, there are 3 connected devices. 3 things connected to the internet for every human in the world. It's extraordinary. You know, if you think about the what does that mean? And as you connect more stuff, you have more data that comes from that stuff. You have more things that can talk to other things that you never would have expected. But also think about the security threats associated with that as well. How do you make sure that you protect yourself, protect your data? So, you know, this relentless connectivity is incredibly powerful, and also can have challenge associated with it as well. And if you just look at yesterday, where there were outages took place, I think Facebook was down for 6 hours, WhatsApp was down for 6 hours, so was Instagram. And if you think about how that affected all of us, probably all of us right now, you know, felt that in some way. I mean, for me, I'm a prolific user of WhatsApp with my friends. I'm like, you know, you suddenly you can't connect with those individuals because that platform is down. So it's become such an integrated part of our lives, how we communicate, how we engage, both in business but also personally, you know, as day to day, you know, for individuals.
Definitely. And yeah, the WhatsApp sort of shut down last night was incredible. I mean, I didn't, as you say, I didn't realize how much I relied on WhatsApp to message basically everyone on. and sort of almost going back to iMessage seemed very archaic. So
Yes.
interesting how your mentality shifts that way. In regards to the use of data, are there any emerging trends or ways in which you think that could go, and ways in which you think it could be used even more so in the future?
You know, I think some of the things that will be interesting for us to watch is, and if you look certainly as part of a big part of the European agenda that we see, and I don't just mean the EU in that, I mean Europe, you know, from a construct standpoint, is privacy, and just how incredibly important that is. We are all very, very sensitized to the way in which our personal data is used. And if you think on that now, what's happening, and a big dynamic as a result of that is you'll hear a lot of conversation around data sovereignty. And what that means is that, you know, if you are a citizen of certain countries, that from a sovereignty standpoint, your data should reside in that country and stay in that country. So as businesses think through what that means, people, society think through what that means, you know, it has a big, there's a big implication, you know, around that. It's important that we all work and think through. So I think sensitivity to where, and we're all very probably too free with our information, you know, and being mindful of where and how that is being used, to be sensitive to that. And I also feel that there is, you know, that if you just look at the way in which data can be used, and personal data can be used to be monetized as well. So, you know, thinking through some of those different dynamics. So how can it be monetized, but then which you may think could be you could feel that that's a challenge, but then the other side is, how can your experience as a user of whatever environment you're engaged in be improved as a result of the fact that people have data on you? So what you like, what you don't like, what you prefer, and think about how different platforms that you operate with today use that data in order to learn about you, about your preferences, to make your experience much, much better. And I think part of it will be thinking about what you are comfortable with, and where and how you choose to release your data, you know, is an important element as well.
Definitely.
But you know, also, Chloe, back to your question on trends, something else that I think is important to mention is around the whole area from a sustainability perspective as well. So this is you know, if you think around that and around the path to net zero, how you achieve that, that's one of the big conversations that's taking. We have COP26 coming up, as we know, early next month. Thinking about that, and how can technology be part of the solution to help with the sustainability agenda, and thinking about circular economy and all those types of things as well. It's a big topic that you know, people are getting engaged in now as well, which is a good thing.
Definitely. Are there any technology items, or sort of any pieces of technology that specifically could, or are being discussed, or could help to further us sort of trend towards being more sustainable?
I think there's lots of things, and you know, and a big element is around, if you think from a technology perspective, as you design and you innovate within different environments, always having a thinking around this principle of circular economy as you do that. So with that, if you're thinking about how you're designing and developing that particular product, mindful of power consumption, mindful of the way in which you're building out the construct of that product itself to be highly optimal in the design, the topology of it. Thinking about how you are looking at the supply chain more broadly, you know, thinking about the packaging around that product and the innovation as well, where and how you're developing it, how you're shipping those items as well. But then also when it reaches the stage where that innovation is becoming end of life, or reaching the end of its journey, how do you make sure that you bring that technology back and you reuse, you know, and refresh, and you know, as much as you possibly can. So you know, all of those different items, you think cradle to grave with the technology and the innovation, is really important.
Definitely. We have a question from the audience actually, which we could answer now if you would like.
Sure.
It is about skills and upcoming skills. So the question is, What do you think are up and coming skills that are going to be in high demand, and how to keep up with the continuous learning?
So, you know, if you think about the area of digital skills as a topic and as an agenda item, is incredibly important. And if you think about, as we are back to the digitizing everything, technology becoming pervasive, how do you make sure that no generation is left behind as you go through that journey? So if you look at elements around, you know, so it's as fundamental as that, plus there'll be deeper things that you know, so I always feel it's like the 5 generations. And if you think about, just think in your daily life of the transition for, say, you know, I'm sure everyone here has bank accounts. And if you think about, as banking has gone pretty much, you know, online, app-based, digitized as a business, how do you make sure that you are able to, from a skills standpoint, with all those different generations, stay on top and stay close to that, and you're not leaving people behind in the journey overall? I think there's also a big piece around what are the skills that will be, are incredibly important now, and there'll be even more demand and requirement in the future around the area of security. So making sure that, again, back to as you continue to connect things, how you can make sure that you are cyber aware and driving skills in that area, plus data scientists. So people who are able to sift through and understand trends and patterns in data. So those 2 themes, I think, have been important for some time, will continue to be incredibly important. And then as you start linking into some of the areas around artificial intelligence, machine to machine, and some of those other elements from a communication perspective.
Great. Are there any more questions from the audience that we can answer now as well? Feel free to just pop them into the chat box if you do have any.
Hi, this is Dalim here. If I could say that we have people here who are very much to do with green IT and eco and so on. So if you would like to pick up on Wendy's point about COP26, the circular economy, and what we can do, please do put those into the chat and we'll pick them up. And likewise, digital divide is something that we're very concerned about as well. And I know there are people in the audience who are very much concerned about that. So likewise, think of questions, and we've got a great scenario here where we're small and comfortable enough for it to be very personal. We're so privileged to have you, Wendy, to talk to. So let's make the most of this.
Oh, my pleasure.
We have actually one question from, and apologies if I pronounce your name wrong, Chi-Yin Lee. If you want to ask the question yourself, I think we're able to do that.
If you raise your hand, I can unmute you. Okay. Yeah, you can talk now.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi. I already entered the question. I just started in the University of Salford, studying computer science and cybersecurity, undergraduate. Have you got any career path advice for me?
I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
So I would say, firstly, you've done a fantastic step in doing what you do and studying what you're studying. You know, I think it's a fantastic topic, you know, for sure to be engaged in. And, you know, and I would say that advice-wise, you know, maybe what year are you in your university studies?
First year.
First year.
Yeah.
You know, I would say that I would really encourage you to reach out to see if you can get some placements in the summer. You know, to start to work with different organizations, so you start to get a little bit known as well, you know, so that when you come to the time when you're graduating and you have some experience which is industry experience, I think that would really help you.
Is there any Cisco points of contacts in Manchester that I can?
Yes, there are. And so I would suggest maybe Chloe, we can connect separately with Chi, you know, about that, because we have you know, at Cisco, we have a number of programs around, we do two things. So there's our apprentice program, which is around for folks who are leaving, you know, leaving school straight away and not going through university. But then also there are undergraduate programs that we run as well. Sorry, once you've graduated, you know, programs as well. So there's a lot of, you know, if I think back for me when I did my graduate program with Morgan Stanley, I felt was a great grounding, you know, to once you get in. So there are both of those routes. So we can certainly share some more detail. We can do that, Chloe, with you afterwards, and you can share that out to Chi and others if they're interested.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's great. Yeah, if you want to leave your email in the chat box, we can make sure that you get that message, that information over.
Thank you, Chloe. Thank you very much.
No problem. So we have two more. Charlotte, would you like to ask the question on video or on yourself, on audio?
Okay, hold on. Go ahead.
Recap, please, Charlotte. Yeah.
So my question would be,
Okay, I think we'll just have to read the question. I'm not sure why your microphone's not working. So yeah, Charlotte says, in today's climate, do you feel that a master's would be required in order to progress upwards?
I don't, Charlotte. You know, if I look, I mean, I have one, but you know, if I talking openly, and if I think back in those days when I took that decision, I think for me, I took that decision because I wasn't ready. You know, being totally open with you, I wasn't ready to go into a full-time job at that time, and I wanted to continue studying for an additional year. And if I think about what I learned on that studying for an additional year and doing that master's, you know, for me, some of those different areas, was it beneficial? Yes, it was. But I don't believe that was necessary. And, you know, and that's back then, right? That's 30 years or so ago. And to your question of in today's climate, no, I don't think it is. I actually think getting a combination of, back to what I said to Chi earlier, a combination of academic grounding plus industry as well. If you can do both, I think it's very powerful, because then you're able to reflect onto some of your experiences, the things that you have done, you know, and it's not just the academic knowledge. You're able to combine both things. So that would be my response to that. And you know, if I think for a number of years, personally, I thought, should I do an MBA? You know, and I thought a lot about that, and I thought, you know, and I came to the conclusion of no, it wasn't the right thing for me. And a lot of what was driving me for that was, when you do an MBA, it's around the network that you build of relationships that you form with people, which, you know, can be very, very powerful, that network that you build. But, you know, I qualified that out for myself, and I felt that it wasn't right for me. I wasn't necessarily going to gain additional items above. So hope that helps, Charlotte. Hope that answers your question.
Thanks. And I've just sent a message. So there's a user called Pineapple. If you'd like to ask your question, feel free to raise your hand. Otherwise, the question is, what would you suggest top tips for career changes trying to get into the tech industry are?
Sorry, Chloe, can you say that again?
Sorry, top tips on career changes. So people trying to get into the tech industry. What would your top tips be?
My top tips would be, I think sometimes people have a perception that the technology industry is full of geeks and nerds. And it's not. I'm not one. So, you know, I think a top tip is don't have a perception about a certain industry based on, you know, maybe something you've seen on the television or some form of it, you know. So if I look, there's lots of different types of jobs in the technology sector. And if I think of the colleagues that I work with and have worked with for many years, they've come from lots of different types of backgrounds. So I think that's one thing that's important. I remember being about a year, probably 2 years ago now, at an event which was for women in technology. It was a panel I was asked to join, and there were a number of you know, ladies in the audience, and 2 or 3 of them came up to me, and this was before the panel even started, and they said, "Oh, but you're a real technologist." What do you mean? You know? And they said, "Well, you know, your background, you studied engineering, the different things that you've done." And they said they had come from very different backgrounds, not technical backgrounds, and they were managing technical teams, and they felt they felt challenged with that. And I said, "Listen, just because I've come through a route which is a very traditional route, it doesn't mean it's the only route that you can go through." So, you know, I think on that, it's one of, you know, I would just say in technology, there's lots of different types of jobs. And also the way in which you can enter into a role working for a technology company, there's many, many different paths. And don't feel put off by any preconceived, you know, or you've got to have deep knowledge and be a, you know, deep techie around. You don't have to be.
I can definitely concur with that as well. I studied international relations, and yeah, I mean, my studies were very, very different to the tech career that I ended up in. So definitely can get into a variety of backgrounds, and I wouldn't say there was ever a question on my degree or, you know, whether it was relevant in any of my interviews.
Yeah, and if I look, Chloe, for me, if I think back to, yeah, I studied electronic engineering, but what do I really use from that today? You know, what I use from when you study you know, an engineering qualification, it teaches you structure and logic. So I use that, but I don't use the content of, you know, the technology content from that. You don't, you know, because the pace of change and things that move.
Definitely. We have a question from Maureen. Maureen, if you'd like to ask the question yourself, please raise your hand. Okay, so the question from Maureen is, many years ago, there was a controversy over Cisco equipment being used in China. Have you experienced any controversies recently? And she says she's also surprised that Russia has not developed their own technology infrastructure. So if you're able to share anything on that, if not, I don't know, if there's something maybe more generally that you can share.
You know, I think the thing that's important is around, and this maybe comes to some of the sovereignty pieces, you know, I was talking about earlier, and, you know, as organizations and countries think about technology, how they're using technology within their environments. And, you know, if I look for Cisco, who I work for, we're an American headquartered company, but we're international, you know, we're global in nature, and we work within all of those different markets across the globe. And of course, there's always different competitors that you will come up against in those different environments. And, you know, I think to you know, the comment around controversy, all of us will face, you know, different dynamics and aspects along the way. And I think it's just so important to make sure that you're clear on what it is that you're able to offer, how your innovation and your technology is able to help in that particular market, and how you're able to address some of the opportunities and the challenges there. And, you know, I would say it's how you manage and work with some of those different situations that's the most important thing. But, you know, it's but, you know, if you think for the world is global, you have local dynamics that you need to work with, but then also being able to, you know, act global, think local, you know, is something that's so very, very important.
A question from me actually on that. Are there any sort of geographical boundaries or problems that you have in terms of, I don't know, different techs you can use, or the way in which you use tech in different countries?
So where you will come across areas that will be important is around, again, some of the national items. So for, say, critical national infrastructure in different countries, and then, you know, how technology will be used and managed in those countries as you work with different areas of government, you know, as an example, and then also linking to some of the pieces around, again, data, you know, sovereignty. Where does that sit? And all of those items. Those are some of the things that are areas where it's very, very important to understand, have the detail, you know, around government, some of the defense areas and those types of things.
Great, thank you. A question from, sorry, I've just gone too far, from, don't think we have a name, but anyway, as ICT professionals, what role can we play in influencing human behaviors to drive an ethical circular economy within our communities, organization, and industries?
And that's from Santana.
Sure. So, you know, this is an area where this is hugely, hugely important. And, you know, if I just reflect for us recently, you know, I was on a circular economy panel, you know, for Cisco and for, you know, for our business, looking at some of these items. And it is so incredibly important for us, if you think about within your supply chain, overall, really understanding the different elements and the different aspects within the supply chain, what you are doing as an organization around, you know, some of those elements from a behavior standpoint, but also any third parties that you're working with as well. Because ultimately, you know, you are responsible for some of those different elements too. So thinking through all of the different steps, all of the different stages, different dependencies that people have on each other. So that's really, really important. And you know, around some of those ethics elements and the details there, and something I think is going to be really critical for us as well is that, you know, if we think about some of the commentary around net zero and how we get to that, and the aspirations and the goals that organizations are looking to achieve, that really people are held accountable for that, and it's not just headline grabbing statements around topics, and that you're able to really measure in a meaningful way, you know, where and how you're having an impact on some of these items as well. So I think that will be important from a behavior standpoint. And I think a big part of this is around education, you know, making sure people are informed, that they understand the role that each individual can play. If I look for us in Cisco, we launched something called the Green and Blue Innovation Challenge. And we called it green for sustainability, blue for Cisco, you know, and the kind of the company color. And we said this is around how digital and green can come together and work, you know, together to help to solve to some of these different dynamics within the sustainability challenge overall and the circular economy. And when we get into those conversations, we have all the different areas of our business involved in those conversations, to make sure that everyone is clear on what role they can play as an individual, but also how we can work together to make sure we achieve common objectives as well. So I think, and there's a big part in there around education, informing, and, you know, keeping these topics top of mind.
Thanks. Another question around measures in Cisco to increase diversity or to promote diversity.
Yeah, you know, if I look for us, we have so we have spent a huge amount of time on this area, and we continue to do that, and just diversity in its broadest possible sense. You know, so we're strong believers in Cisco around, you know, if you think clearly there's been a big focus around gender diversity, but and also, you know, elements around diversity with all, you know, all different backgrounds and roots as well. So thinking about different ethnicities, different cultures, different environments too. So when we go through, and as we're hiring talent, as an example within the company, we'll make sure that we're very, very mindful around the pipeline of talent, you know, that we're looking at. We will run panels, diverse panels, to make sure that, you know, people are there's a, you know, a good combination of different types of individuals interviewing candidates, and also that we'll look at our teams and the makeup of our teams, and how we're focusing on the different types of profiles of individuals as well. So this is, I think it's so important to make sure that you're able to represent all of the different areas from a community perspective. If I look back to, I mentioned earlier around the apprentice programs, the graduate programs as well, where we make sure that we have an extremely diverse group of individuals that we bring into the organization as well. So lots of, more to do for sure, but we have a lot of focus, on diversity more broadly.
Wendy, this is Darlene. I wonder, you've been mentioning Cisco quite a bit, and I'm aware that a lot of us don't really know what is the world of Cisco, which markets, sectors, technologies are we talking about. We usually think of Cisco as being, wow, that's complicated, isn't it? But give us a pen picture of Cisco. Give us a couple of minutes on Cisco.
Sure. So Cisco as an organization so we're a technology company, and we design, innovate, and develop solutions and technologies to solve lots of different challenges. And I think about the portfolio of Cisco and the things that we work on. So we have a portfolio around what we call the collaboration area. So around video innovation, use of technology for hybrid work, as we would call it. So a big portfolio there, a big portfolio around the area of networking. So if you think about this environment we're in now, the traffic that flows through the internet and how the internet is connected together, the bulk of that technology used for that to make the internet work is Cisco's technology. So what we would call routed and switched networking technology to be able to facilitate that communication construct. The area of security, so we mentioned cyber, is a big area that we focus on within Cisco as well. So making sure that you're able to understand and protect and secure the environment in which you're communicating. And then also we do a lot of work around wireless, 5G, and the Internet of Things. So lots of different areas, all associated with making sure that things connect, and also they connect in a highly secure, highly available manner. And on the markets, Darlene, in which we operate, it's lots of different types of markets. So within banking, within retail, within service providers, within small businesses. So lots of different areas and places for sure.
That's fascinating. And of course, the way I think of it, you have been, Cisco has been one of those organizations absolutely instrumental during the last 1.5, 2 years. What have been some of the challenges that the organizations face, simply in terms of meeting the demands of connectivity and all those other areas you mentioned during the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, if I look for us, I remember in March of last year, coming back from a trip I'd been on to the Middle East. That's the last time I was on a plane. I'd come back so my last trip was flying back from Saudi Arabia into London. And then we took this is like early March time, and we took the decision to, because of the pandemic and what was happening, to move all of our people to work remotely. And I remember that we did that within my region, and then we moved quickly globally to do that. So, I think initially it was getting up and running 75,000 people across the globe online from home. And we were fortunate because of the technology, and we were all efficient with it, to do that in a day, make that happen very, very quickly. So then for us, clearly working very, very closely with our customers and our partners across the globe to help them to be able to achieve that too, to make sure that they were able to have that remote connectivity, for us to be able to help to support them to get access to the technology and the innovation to do that, but also to be able to make sure that we could deal with the volumes and the sheer demands on capacity, in order to be able to run some of those environments. we have within Cisco a video conferencing solution called WebEx. And we then went through the stages rapidly of building out additional infrastructure to cope with the sheer volume of capacity of calls on that environment. And you know, one of the, I think it was the largest user of WebEx was actually the education sector in Greece, the whole country. And the education sector went on to WebEx as a platform, as all the schools, both primary and secondary, became remote learning immediately. You know, so dealing with all of those different volumes and capability was a big area of focus for us, as suddenly everybody flipped to remote and had a big dependency on the different areas from a technology perspective. And I think also, you know, one of the things that we saw was, you know, some industries were more technology aware and some were less so. And it was a really important time for them to catch up and to accelerate with the use of technology. So as an example, education, like I just mentioned, healthcare, and also parts of government as well, and maybe weren't as familiar in using the innovation and the capability. And if you look now, you know, one of the things that I think will be so important for us all is to make sure that we take some of the lessons, you know, over the past 18 months or so and use them as we rethink, you know, within business, how we can change the way we do things, and not just say, oh, we're back to normal now. You know, making sure that we capture and learn from what we've all gone through to enhance and improve, you know, the way in which we do things.
That's great, and I mean a very detailed answer there as well. I had a quick question around sort of the innovation space and innovation companies. What are your sort of tips and tricks on progressing, or I guess maybe an oversight into what the difference is in terms of progressing between a small startup company and a larger company like Cisco? Well, a much larger company like Cisco.
Yeah, you know, I think if I look for as you innovate, and there's lots of different ways by which you can innovate in both you know, startup small environments and also large environments. But I think one of the things that's really important in both is the culture. You know, the culture and the way in which you inspire, you motivate, and you encourage creativity in people around you, and don't get caught up in a set of thinking, oh, but we don't do it like that. And if you're, you know, if you have if you experience that, then naturally that will stop you from driving that innovation and that creativity from a culture perspective. So, you know, I think really you want the best of both worlds. You want the entrepreneurial spirit and the creativity in anything as possible, and breakthrough thinking that you feel that you will only get in a startup, but actually get that startup thinking and desire and appetite in a larger company as well. And being able to do that, I mean, from my personal experience, I feel fortunate that I was able to do it in both worlds. Startup in a startup, being the 9th employee in a company. You know, and if I think back to those days of doing everything from hiring people, delivering on projects, selling the new projects, buying milk for the office, emptying the bin. That's kind of how it is when you're in a startup environment. So then taking a startup theme in a big company, you know, and driving it that way as well. But I think a big part of it is the spirit, the culture, and the way in which you approach stuff, and the people you surround yourself with that fosters that.
Great, thank you for that advice. Just a quick point maybe on building up those skills. Are there any sort of women in tech platforms that you know of, or maybe anything that Cisco has, which people can use to build up those skills, maybe in areas that they don't already have them?
Yeah, we have a very strong, and again we'll share this, you know, after the call. We have a very strong connected women's network within Cisco, and that's not only for our own people, our own employees, but also externally as well. So we can certainly share that, you know, to, again, a big part, you know, what big part, and I wish someone had told me this when I was younger, you know, using your network of people that you build along the way, and really spending time on that, nurturing it, it will pay you back, you know, it's one of the most powerful things that you have. And so, you know, certainly those communities, we can give you some detail on that, and then, you know, those groups will be able to share, you know, broader items as well within the UK, and then also in some of the other countries as well.
Great, thanks. There's a question around how Cisco is leading the design for the environment or design for circularity for the technology sector. And this is from Santana, and she's also mentioned a point on the fact that modular electronics have their place in reducing e-waste and also meeting the SDGs as well.
Sure, and you know, if I look for us for, you know, design principles as we work through from, you know, a product development standpoint within our platforms, absolutely right. You know, if you think on some of those modular items, how that helps with, you know, ease from an upgrade perspective, and again, how you can make sure that you're able to continue to, you know, reuse some of the different items as well. You know, when you get back to refresh technology and innovation too. So if you look for, you know, certainly for us, as we think about new innovation and new capability, all of those different steps and stages are so important. And then also if you think about, you know, consumption from a power perspective as well, and just the sheer requirement, you know, of you know, energy usage in order to power environments, facilities, etc. The most efficient you can possibly be in the build, the development of the design of the architecture, with that as a key component, is critical as well.
Thank you, Wendy. One quick question to maybe draw upon Darlim's point at the beginning of digital divide. Is there any information you can share on what that means to you, and also maybe how we can bridge that gap as well?
Yeah, I feel that the digital divide, and it's a number of different things. If you look for us within the UK as an example, it's so incredibly important for us to make sure that there is access to high quality, highly secure, highly available connectivity. You know, and if you think about, no matter where you live, you know, be it rural, be it urban, be it north or south, wherever you might be, you know, within the country, that you have that access to a highly available, reliable connectivity source. So I think that's one thing as a fundamental that's so very, very important. And then I think also there's a piece around skills. So if you think for us from a digital skills perspective, making sure that people have a confidence, a familiarity, but also an access to the technology as well. If we think about some of the education elements, we within Cisco run the Network Academy, NetAcad program, and that's something that has been run for over 20 years in many countries across the globe. And this is all around the skills agenda and how you can make sure that people have a confidence, of familiarity, and a knowledge, you know, of the different technology and the different innovation. And I think also another area I'm personally passionate about is around the generational aspects as well. You know, that you make sure that you know, you think about confidence with the use of technology. Some generations are more confident than others, and making sure that you don't run with such a pace of digitization that you leave people behind, you know, is something that I think we all need to be very mindful as well.
Definitely. I mean, even myself, I felt that I was comfortable with technology and sort of adapted quickly until I see some of my friends' siblings, and they are just on another level. Sort of, you know, people in primary school who know how to use an iPad far better than I do.
Yeah, and think about the generation in front of us, you know, just how challenging for them, and the generation in front of them, and just, you know, everyone keeping up with the pace is it's a big ask for people.
Definitely. No, it's incredibly fast. I think that's all the questions that we have. If there's any more from the audience that haven't been submitted yet.
There's one from TG. Can you see that in the chat?
Yes. So for those who are willing to switch specialist areas in technology, do you have any advice if you don't have sort of any prior experience to the area that you're looking to move into, on how you could get that experience, or how you might be able to persuade an employer that, you know, you're sort of keen and able to learn?
So I think if you're working for an employer and you're in a particular domain and you have an interest in getting involved in another domain, you know, maybe volunteering to do some stretch assignments or stretch projects is a good way to do it. Getting to know some of the people who are in that other domain, you know, a little bit, and maybe shadowing them, you know, having some experiences with them. So then you start networking, you know, in that area overall. And I think also maybe joining some user groups or forums associated with some of the new areas as well. So again, it's back to this networking aspect and getting to know others, and people introduce people, you know, so I would, don't be shy on those aspects as well. I think it can be very powerful.
Great. I think, is that all of the questions that we have? Darling, are there any other points that we should touch on?
There's pineapple, 7:17 p.m.
Who is pineapple? Reveal yourself, pineapple.
This might have already been covered sort of briefly with Cheese Point, but a question on apprenticeships or graduate programs for those who are looking to sort of change careers from another industry, not just for those who have sort of come out of school.
So change careers who have not come out of school or graduate.
Yeah,
So I think those I mean, so those programs are, so if I think about the apprentice program, I met with a lady a year or so ago who joined the apprentice program, who had not just come out of school. She had been working somewhere else, and she had decided that an apprentice program was she was trying to work out what she should do as the next stage, and she joined the apprentice program. And she joined in her early 20s, and the rest of the folks on the apprentice program were around 18. So she was, you know, older than that group, but joined and you know, has flourished, done extremely well within that environment. So I would say that it is, it doesn't just have to be, you know, straight from and specific ages, you know, for those different groups. But again, we can share more, you know, on those programs, you know, if that's of interest.
I'm just going to unmute Pineapple in case they have anything else they want to say.
No, thank you. I couldn't find the unmute button, but no, thank you. I was just intrigued to find out what type of programs Cisco was trying to run, because I know some of the larger banks, they're trying to get a diverse range of people who come with a different set of skill set. And so there was, I think they've got one called TDD, and it's like an accelerator program for those particularly who've had experience in other jobs. They are maybe in their 30s, 40s, 50s, or whatever age they are, and they've got years of experience doing something else, which are transferable skills that they can bring over, but they want to change and get into tech. So I mean, for me personally, I'm trying to go along that yellow brick road, as I try to call it to my kids. And I've worked in the administrative fields in the legal industry for about 10 years. I then put myself, started teaching myself how to code, then put myself through a boot camp. And so now I'm trying to get into like a job role, but I'm seeing that there's a lot of apprenticeship schemes, but they're all geared for young, just come out of school, don't know what you do, like, do you want to go college? Do you want to go university? No, come and do this apprenticeship scheme. And they're not really saying, oh, you want to switch? You want to come with your previous experience and skills because you did something else? We can actually use some of that whilst you do your tech as well. And that's why I kind of just wanted to find out if you could explain.
Sure. Yeah, you know, so if I look at certainly, you know, there are programs that we run around what we call second jobber return back into the market, cross train as well. So what I would say is, let me get some further detail on that, and we can send that through to you as well, so you can take a look.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, we've got a question from Abimbola. I don't know whether you want to raise your hand and speak, or I can read it out. So they've asked, is there any network you could recommend to upgrade practical skills of women in tech?
I would suggest on that one that we can connect to the Cisco Women's Network, and then the Cisco Women's Network will be able to point to some of those different groups. I think that's probably the best way to do it, because I wouldn't have that top of mind right now.
Yeah, if you'd like to share your email in the chat, we can send that over to you as well.
Okay, and as a good BCS member, of course, I have to mention BCS Women, which is some 3,000 strong of the 60,000 in BCS. And there's quite a strong network there as well, with some senior people. Numerous opportunities and so on, but do take up Wendy's offer, and also do get in touch with us, and we'll tell you about the BCS Women Network. Thank you.
Perfect.
Great. I think that might be all of the questions that we have for today.
We've got some more.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
There's one from TG. Starts, for those of us willing. Can you see it?
Yes, I think we've covered that one already.
Yeah, we've done that one.
Okay.
We've got one from Chi and Lee. Do Cisco have any reach out programs to university?
Well, I know the answer to that. So,
go ahead.
well, Cisco has an excellent partnership with UCL, for example, University College London, and I'm sure with many others. Wendy?
Absolutely, you nailed it there, Dylan. We do a lot of work with the different universities, and again, we can send some more detail through on that later.
And another question on the digital divide. So for people who are not IT professionals, what do you see as the minimum set of skills that all people, or people who don't have those skills, should aim to have now? And then, yeah, so maybe if we answer that question first, there's sort of 3 questions as part of this one, and then we'll move on to the other ones.
And also, if I may just briefly interrupt, I know there is an excellent communications professional here called Helen, who is with you, Wendy, and she might like to give some of her opinions in terms of the power of communications. Over to you first.
I forgot the question.
In terms of the digital divide, what are the minimum set of skills for those who aren't IT professionals that you should aim to have?
I would say a familiarity with just technology overall. So, I would say a familiarity with being able to use technology as part of day-to-day. I think we all do that quite well. I would get up to date on some of the different security aspects, and just think about how you can make sure that you are able to deal with some of the different security challenges overall. And I would also keep an eye on trends, new things. Just Google top tech trends, read that, and become familiar with some of the different things that are starting to happen within the industry overall. I think there would be good things. But I would also, don't get bogged down with, there's a lot of, there can be a lot of gobbledygook and unnecessary complication as well. And just, I'm a big believer of simplify, simplify as much as you can on all these areas.
And on those future trends, are there any key trends that you think could also be added to that core set of skills in the future?
Yeah, I think on future trends, certainly I would be very interested to see, where the area of artificial intelligence moves towards. And I say that from, if I think back for me on my undergraduate degree, I remember doing a project on neural networks. And then when I did my master's, I spent time with Pilkingtons on expert systems. So I think seeing how that area really moves at pace in years to come, I think will be really interesting. And then also the piece around machine-to-machine learning. I think those two as topics, and just what really moves there will be good to see.
Great. Just on that as well, a question around how we'd bring the over 50s up to scratch as well, or up to a sort of minimum level of understanding the current technology.
I'm in that group. So I would say that what's so important is, this is back to the generation comment, I was making earlier. I think it's making sure that people don't have fear. And, because if you have a fear of something, you will be more, you'll be less likely to get involved or get engaged, in particular themes. Fear of change, fear of new things. And I also believe, I learn a lot through talking to people and having them explain, explain themes, explain items. You get some great content on the internet, great content on YouTube. So I would really, encourage, again, back to do a little bit of just brief research on some things. And you can rather than sitting reading papers, watch a video of someone talking about something. I think it's a great way to learn. And I find I retain it more than just sitting and reading.
Great. I think Helen also raised a hand.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted just to kind of comment that obviously the focus here is on technology careers in technology, but there are many careers in technology that actually for people who aren't involved in technical roles. So I support Wendy on communications. I've got colleagues in finance who are, in marketing, on social media. Cisco's got its own TikTok account, Instagram, etc. That there are so many roles in technology that actually don't involve, being, a person in technology. And, I think, having an interest and an awareness of the industry is absolutely great. And you certainly need that. But, don't rule out a career in technology if you don't actually want to do a job that directly involves in it. There's a great career to be built in technology. In supporting our customers, our business, and that was it really.
But Helen, you're clearly a millennial. Don't you need to be a millennial to be able to use these social media things effectively?
No. I have young children who tell me how to do it. No, I am. To be honest, it's one of those things. I've kind of, I've developed I've been in communications for a long time, since before social media was a thing. And, it's just one of those things that you evolve, you pick these things up as time goes on. And, everyone who's at the early stage of their career now, by the time, technology moves on at such pace, the different things will come on board. You just have to move with the times and just be open to things, as Wendy said, and, that just constantly be open to learning. That's the same as anywhere, but particularly so in technology where things move so fast.
Thank you. Another question on apps this time. What do SW and app developers need to aim for to ensure commonality on interfaces? If this is an area you're able to answer on.
I'm not, I'm afraid.
No problem. I thought that could be quite technical.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, what I do think though is, you know, again, if we think of some of the conversation that we've talked about, software developer communities, you know, from a skills and a thinking side, that as a group, you know, is certainly, you know, skills wise, but for now and for the future, something that's important.
Great. A question on ethical AI and a personality profile tool. A question on how can we basically adapt to fast changing technology at work? And are we also all tuned into the change now? So I guess that's around sort of AI, the personality profile tool. I'm not sure if that's.
I don't know what that is. What I would say is, what I would say is I think that it is really important for us to, you know, have a mindfulness around, you know, ethics associated with AI, and you start to see actually some academic institutions opening departments focused on ethics and AI, and I'm glad to see that. I think it's important. You know, and if I think for me, I was a avid reader of Isaac Asimov's books. You know, and remember, Asimov was the person who innovated and he created the word robot, you know, as an author. And if you think to some of the principles that he introduced many years ago, was around what are the rules, and the rules between the interaction between human and robot. And, you know, what does that look like? How does that progress? And what do you automate? And what do you have as human intervention? You know, in some of those different items, I think we have learned a lot as society on those things, and we'll need to continue to be very, very focused on it as well.
Thank you. Nicola, if there's anything else on that you'd like to ask, please feel free to raise your hand. A question on addressing, oh, sorry, Nicola's raised her hand.
Okay.
So can we go to you, Nicola, first?
Go ahead.
Hello. Now, it's interesting. Hello, Nick. I'm Nicola Strong. It's so lovely to see you. I haven't actually had a chance to listen to all of your presentation, but I'm curious that you brought up the rules, Asimov's rules. I mean, obviously there are now 128 frameworks and principles for ethical AI and rules, but I'm curious about whether in fact our ability to adapt, my second part of my statement, our ability to adapt is actually now so inherent in our way of being at work that actually we don't need to evaluate that anymore. It's really something that's part of the way we are in our culture, and certainly in our work culture. What are your thoughts on our ability to adapt to new technologies?
I think for us to adapt to new technologies, you know, I think that people are able to adjust and adapt and have to, right? It's that fight or flight thing within your environment, how you're able to cope and to work. I think some of the other pieces, Nicola, which is where I was nudging towards, it was around, again, back to this piece of ethics, you know, and thinking about ethics within artificial intelligence and where, you know, where and how, what is the rule-based principle around that? You know, so I think as humans, our ability to be able to adjust and adapt to different environments and the use of innovation, the use of technology in the day-to-day. I mean, just look at the past 18 months, how we've all adapted remarkably, you know, to that because we've had to, we've been forced to. But I think there's kind of another level of some of the other items around data, around principles, and what will you actually permit to automate and what won't you? Decision making rights on things.
I mean, I run a theatre show with an artificial intelligence to encourage people to think about their role and their relationship with artificial intelligence. And it's really interesting how people actually respond to an AI saying, are you good enough? Or actually, do you have any idea about AI biases? Because I'm not biased. My AI data is actually good enough. Is yours? And it's amazing how the audience actually responds to that. Really, really interesting. So we've been running it now for about, I don't know, 3 years. And it's been a really important thing for me to see what people in pubs, clubs, theatres, workplaces, how they are dealing with an AI that talks back in a very philosophical way. Anyway, I don't want to monopolize. I'm just delighted that you're here.
Thank you.
We have another question from Chi, who was the person who was studying computer science and cybersecurity at their undergraduate. The question is, in their current cohort, they only have 3 women who are studying with them. Are there any sort of ways that we can encourage women to be more interested in the sort of computer science, computer related studies? And also, is there anything that Cisco is doing around that work?
Yeah, well, we do a lot again around the Network Academy stuff I mentioned earlier, and again a lot of work with schools, around technology, and back to Helen's point actually of this principle of there's lots of different types of roles in technology. Everyone doesn't need to be a coder or a developer, and trying to encourage that cross-pollination of talent. But I think also what's so important for all of us to make sure that we're simplifying what does it mean to work in technology, and that people don't. I feel that there's sometimes a stigma of everybody thinks you have to be a deep technologist, and you don't. There's lots and lots of different types of jobs, and there's lots of different ways by which you can get into a career in technology, and you don't have to just be from a background of science, technology, engineering, maths. You can come in by many different routes. And, I think really driving that message is something that, everyone could play a role there, and that's so important.
Great. David, hopefully I have covered all of those questions now.
Yes, I think we've done all the questions. We do have several things to get back to people on, and I did write in the chat, it's easier for us if you send us an email, then we can respond to it, and then we can keep track of it.
Where, in the chat or some other way, David?
Send us an email, so I'll type our email address in the chat again.
Yeah, and just say it as well now, if you would.
Yeah, it's london.central@bcs.org.
london.central@bcs.org.
Yeah, and then we can reply back with what we've discussed previously.
Okay, well, I've got a question for somebody in the audience, and that's Mervyn. And Mervyn made a comment, which was, grandchildren grab my tablet from me and do it quicker. Well, I just want to pick up on that. Presumably the tablets you're referring to are not for ailments. But Mervyn, as an older person, presuming you're not in your 30s or 40s, as an older person, do you find you're being phased out of our technological world? Are you too old? And you just take a look at my face before you answer that, in case you think I'm picking on you. Mervyn, what do you think?
I can unmute.
Hi, Mervyn. Do you feel there's a big age divide?
I don't think he wants to speak.
Fine. All right. Well, let me pick up on that point. Wendy, I think 50 is a little bit of a magic age at this point in time in the IT industry. Over 50, it's really difficult to get a job unless you're in a very senior role. How do you start again or switch? Because BCS, amongst other organizations, did a survey, and they found that the problem with older people is that they don't retrain. They're not agile enough to retrain and do something else. Do you have any comments?
I think it's important to get back to the skills of making sure that you consciously make the effort to always be learning, and always being focused on your, all of us, our development journey is never done. So being open to learn new things, because I do think there's and I say this as someone who's, I'm 52 now, and I think it's important to be, you know, if I look for me, I consciously focus on making sure that you're always learning new things. And that comes from new experiences, new environments, you know, and really making an effort to try to capture new content and new detail. And I think it's so important to do that and be self-motivated to do that. You know, and to network, meet new people in new environments, and don't just be with your crowd that you're familiar with all the time. You know, and I think through that and through building relationships with different generations consciously, you know, I think that's how you learn.
Well, I must say I concur with all of that. And well, what I do in BCS and running groups and networking and so on really helps me, and it energizes me and helps to keep me current, even though I'm constantly running after the truth as opposed to leading it these days. But those are very relevant things. And a point on that, I think you'd be great in BCS, Wendy, but what do you think about professional organizations? Do they have a place anymore? Does it matter?
I think that they do have a place. And I also feel that for technology, you know, if you think about for having a really strong focus around certification and technology, and, you know, and driving an agenda around that, driving the skills agenda, I think that's where, you know, organizations like the BCS can play a really important role. And also demystifying, you know, on the, you know, back to some of the pieces around what does it mean working in a technology sector and different roles, different capability there. I think it's really important.
Great, come and join us. And also some of the issues that we're looking at increasingly are those about the ethics, morality, the reality of what we're doing in terms of what the world needs, because we're trying to make IT good for society. But another thing to do with the digital divide is, hey, we are so privileged in this lovely little niche in the world. So much of the world is on the other side of the divide, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, are we going to leave it all to Chloe and her generation and her children's generation? What do you feel? We're heading towards COP26. Do you think it's realistic to be positive and hopeful about the future?
I think you have to be. You always have to be. Because otherwise, well, you know, I think it's back to one of every single, you know, if you look at things around, like for COP26, everyone has a responsibility to do something, to take action. And you're not just saying, oh, well, I won't be here to see it, doesn't matter, you know, is the wrong attitude, you know. So I think it's so very important that everyone, you know, really takes the opportunity to learn, to understand, and take personal action, you know, on some of these items.
Excellent. Okay, and now let me tease you about something. Women in tech. How many years, how many decades have we been saying we need more women in tech? And still, it's only 14–15%. Have we got this wrong? One of two suppositions I'll give to you. One is that we've got it wrong because women don't want to be in tech. And the other supposition is, or have we got it wrong because tech isn't the word we should be using anymore? Because the mobile phone in my hand and so on, young people don't think of this as tech. They just see it as one of the tools that makes their life go around. So women in tech, have we got it wrong in one of those two ways? Are we misnaming tech, or are we mistakenly thinking more women want to be in tech and forcing them into it?
I think, again, it comes back to there are many different types of roles in the technology sector. And, you know, maybe focus is STEM the route to solve, you know, getting more women into technology. It's one of the routes. It's not the only route. So, you know, women and people from many different diverse backgrounds can come in and enter via different means, and being open to that. And really, you know, again, you know, not representing it in the right way, I think is important. You know, and some of the things around role models, you know, and just showcasing people from different backgrounds doing lots of different jobs. And it's not about geeks and nerds. I don't sit and work with geeks and nerds all the time. That's not, you know, it's not, that's not what it is. So I think there's debunking some myths that are really important as well.
Right, right, great. Chloe, you've got a couple more questions and then we'll move towards closing off, yeah? I think Mervyn has vocalized, but in writing form, hasn't he? You want to pick that up?
Yeah, sure. I think this might be a comment on sort of relearning and retraining. But there's a question or a couple of questions from Nicole on does Cisco have a chief AI ethics officer? And then another one on who your inspiration is.
So do we have an ethics officer? Yes, we do. Do we have an AI officer? No, we don't. You know, so if you think about, you know, AI is embedded in what we're doing and how we're, you know, how we're working. We do a lot of work with research institutions on ethics and AI, you know, and so that's kind of how we're framing it. And if I look for who's my inspiration, if I had to name one person, I would say David Attenborough. And I would say that because of two aspects. One is my love of wildlife, and you know what he has done over the decades, you know, in his role, and then that desire and love and passion, you know, for nature. But then also, if I look at more recently, the work that he's doing around the sustainability side of things, so very, very important, you know, and how the natural world is being challenged as a result of what we are doing, you know, as humans. So David Attenborough for sure.
Okay, well, on that inspirational note, Chloe, may I take over?
Absolutely.
Well, I think David Attenborough is indeed an inspiration, but today, Wendy, you've shown that you are too. And I congratulate you on it. And thank you for the great tips and ideas you've given us, and also the inspiration to continue and learn and so on. And that was a return comment that came back from Mervyn, who I challenged about grandchildren and so on. His comment was, you've got to keep on learning. You need to keep on learning, and that indeed is what we all need to do. So I hope you all join me in thanking our great speaker today, Wendy, and our great interviewer today, Chloe, as well as our great technical man in the background there, David, who we still have not seen. David, are you going to reveal yourself?
I'm on my gaming PC, so I don't have a webcam.
Oh.
That's my excuse.
That is indeed an excuse. But thank you all, and also everyone who has been part of this great session. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope you have too. There'll be lots of ideas coming through from Wendy and from Cisco, which we will try and reflect in the emails and so on. And if you look for what's coming up next, you'll see the ideas that have come through from this section, so we don't lose those. And the next BCS Central and North London event is in fact something informal, which will only be relevant for a certain number of people, because it's from 2 o'clock till 4 o'clock on Monday. We call it coffee and chat. You can call it tea and talk if you like, but it's an informal session, especially aimed at seniors. You can see that from the times and so on, and for people who are feeling digitally left out or excluded and so on. So don't feel left out. Come and join us. Look at the BCS North London branch or Central London branch websites. You'll find coffee and chat there. Come and don't just take it virtually. Come and partake of it in person. We look forward to seeing you. Thank you very much. for being part of this super session with Wendy. Thank you again. And Chloe and everybody else here. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.